A number of years ago, when I was part of a D&D podcast called Hexes and Bows, I was more actively engaged in the gaming community on places like Twitter. And because of that, I ended up seeing this tweet where someone had asked for homebrew rules that, were very popular or that they used in their table to kind of spice things up or whatever, much like the video that I just did. At the time, I didn't respond about, the crit rolls or anything like that. What I responded about was some social homebrew rules that we had at this table that I had basically every table that I played at up until that point, which was that there was a number of things that could happen outside of game that could get you XP. And there were small amounts of XP. Most of them were 1 or 2 points. I think the highest was 5. But basically what they were was things like, hey, you brought snacks, your character gets 1 XP. Or, we had this bardic knowledge one that me and my friends all used at various tables that we ran, where if you had information outside of game that you were able to bring in to help clarify something in game or help make the game more interesting or whatever, then you would get an XP, or I think maybe that one was 2 XP. I don't remember. I don't have the chart anymore. But the point was that there were these little things that we could do that made the encounter, the time hanging out and playing a game or whatever, more enjoyable for everyone involved. Things that really kind of helped entertain or helped make it just a more enjoyable hangout time, or things that, added humor or excitement to the game, stuff like that. Like if you were able to crack a joke that just everybody thought was hilarious or whatever, they could award you some XP. Later, I end up incorporating this into inspiration. But they could award you that for making their experience better. And so these are very small amounts. Like I said, you would never get more than like 6 or 7 at most. If you had really had an amazing session, you wouldn't have more than that. And in D&D, that's not a whole lot of XP. But so I mentioned this, and this person went livid. I mean, just tore into me about how ridiculous that was, and how could I possibly reward something outside of game? Like, how could I do something that like make it unfair to everyone else? And like, he made it very clear that he only ever awarded XP in combat and thought that nothing else should ever get XP, even beyond like anything that I was talking about, like even into like social checks or anything like that. He was very adamant that these are the only ways that you get XP. And if you're giving XP for any other reason, you're cheating. And I sat there and I read this, whole rant that he went on about it. And I said, look, man, these are things that reward people for making the social time together more enjoyable. And if you don't see any value in making the social time fun, I think maybe D&D isn't the right game for you. And that was it. That he blew a gasket at that point. Like the idea that I could deign to tell him that D&D might not be the game for him when he's such a perfect DM and all this other stuff. And I mean, he went off about how much more he deserves to be a GM on D&D than I ever could if I have this approach. And I just kind of let him do it because it was insane. But I did feel bad for the people at his table. But then one of the people that came to his defense jumped in and was like, oh yeah, maybe we should just, if someone brings snacks to a soccer game, we should award their team a point. And I was like, if you don't understand the difference in value between a point in a soccer game, in which the entire game might be decided by one team having 1 point and one team having 0, versus 2 points in a system where you can't even level up without at least, 300 XP. Like, if you think that those two things are in any way similar, maybe you should not be part of this conversation. Maybe you should just leave it to the people who passed elementary school math. And I ended up getting a lot of hate for that one. But I stand by it that, like, this approach to D&D as just a combat simulator is fine if that's the table that you have and that's the type of game you want to run and everyone is on board with that. But to act as though that's what D&D is supposed to be, to act like you can judge people for not doing it that way, no, I'm sorry. You don't deserve the game.